Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session. This is the third session we have on India, on the Triple Trap in India. And we are very glad that we are having 5 distinguished speakers today. And on the question of Kerala. So, well, about Kerala, then it is a place where many of our Chinese friends also know about. Back 15 years ago, we already had organized, I think, maybe about 5 trips of Chinese friends to Kerala to learn about the People's Science Movement and the People's Planning Campaign. And in the last session, we had Wan Yongchen who asked some questions. She actually read some of the papers, some of the articles I wrote about Kerala when I came back to Hong Kong, and that was published in Rural magazine, in the magazine on rural issues in China. So in the first of the series, I talked about the rural libraries in Kerala. And she was very inspired by that. And then she herself started to promote rural libraries in different parts of China, in a lot of the villages. So later on, if we have time, we could also ask her to share some of her experiences. So today we are very honored to have with us 5 guests. And MP PARAMESWARAN is someone that I think you are all very familiar with. In fact, Global University for Sustainability published the first book, which was by MP, which was about the People's Science Movement in Kerala. So MP, he was born in 1935 in Kerala, and he received his bachelor's degree in engineering from the College of Engineering in Kerala. Then he actually was a nuclear scientist, and he studied in Moscow Power Engineering Institute in 1965. But he didn't go into being, continue to be a nuclear scientist, but then he decided to be a people's scientist. He is a very prolific writer. He has written 29 popular science books in Malayalam and 2 in English. And we had invited him to come to Hong Kong to present his ideas on the Ruben republics. He was an active member of the Communist Party of India, Marxist, for 33 years before he was being expelled for writing an ideological book called The Fourth World, which envisions a world based on decentralized democracy and an economic production that is detached from consumerism. So MP has written a lot of papers and articles, and you can find them in the Reader. So, but because MP is not feeling well today, we have requested KK to read out some of the notes he had prepared for this discussion. So, KK, could you take the floor?
Okay, thank you. MP has just informed sorry about not being able to participate. His health condition is not very good. He cannot speak continuously, otherwise he was all prepared to come in and make a presentation. So with that, I will not go in elaborate on his paper. He has just sent some points, and he has included his elaborate paper in the Reader. So you can also refer that. MP basically talks about Kerala becoming a newsmaker in the COVID situation. Kerala has been a newsmaker of sorts for some time. It has been applauded for its total literacy program, where Kerala became the first state to become totally literate. Later, in the local self-governance, Kerala also made a record of sorts by becoming the first state to effect decentralization to the Gram Panchayat in a more or less effective manner. And of course, the educational achievements of Kerala have been quite famous, and the Kerala model, so-called, is also quite famous among economists and those who are interested. So, in that context, he's saying that in the COVID-19 situation, Kerala has again become a newsmaker. The unique experience of Kerala has been basically the low numbers of infection rate when compared to other parts of India and also countries like America. It has been quite low. MP compares the population of Kerala with that of USA. Kerala has 35 million and USA has 320. Patients per million is 800 in Kerala and 9,000 in USA. Death rates per million population has been 0.8 in Kerala and 400 in America. More than half of the patients in Kerala contracted it outside Kerala. Kerala has a large number of population outside Kerala, people who have gone out, especially to Gulf countries for jobs. And so that migration has been at one point of time a great achievement for Kerala because they have been sending money and so on. We have prospered because of that. But when they started coming back, unfortunately, many of them had contracted the disease, and that is becoming a matter of concern over here. And that is present situation. But in spite of all this, we have been able to control the pandemic to a large extent. For Kerala, it is an all-out war to save the lives of the people. The state is run by a left democratic front, which values people above profit. The state health care system reaches out only less than half of the population. He means the government mechanism reaches out, and RADHAMONY is going to make a detailed presentation about that. The other half is serviced by profit-seeking private sector. But even they had to join the state in their war against spread of disease. The state health system was extremely active, and combined with the Panchayat Raj, the decentralized Panchayat, they were able to resist the pandemic in a very effective manner. The details will be dealt both by Gangadharan and RADHAMONY. Every patient is given maximum care. In the process, the state healthcare system developed a highly effective treatment protocol also. Experience in handling of great floods. Since we are also talking about climate change and so on, we had to experience very severe floods both in 2018 and 19. And some people say that we still may have to face a severe flood in the next month. Monsoons are not yet over. This is very important because Kerala is not used to such huge floods. Unfortunately, we had unexpected floods, and it took us by shock, by surprise, and so on. But fortunately, because of the basic structure at the grassroots level, the immense positive response that came from the people, that was a great lesson. And all the youngsters, the panchayats, they all came together to for the rescue operation, rehabilitation, which was massive, and that had actually kind of allowed the entire Panchayati Raj system and the health system to become alive and active. And this exercise of becoming alive and active helped a lot in preparing for the COVID situation. An effective disaster management system was in place. All this came into play during the COVID situation. Above all, the proactive leadership of the Chief Minister and Health Minister. Our Health Minister also spoke at it's a woman, and she was speaking at the UN along with various other achievers in the COVID situation. She performed very well along with the Chief Minister. Being infective even before the appearance of symptoms makes eradication very difficult. We will have to restrict travel of people. This has been done. A very effective system of quarantine with the help of the people. That is the most important thing. It was not done solely by the hospitals. Home quarantine is something which is being practiced all over Kerala, and only in cases where extremely severe cases have to be kind of are isolated and taken to institutional quarantine. Otherwise, most of it is home quarantine. People and voluntary committees in the panchayats take care of that. MP is mentioning about that. The present restrictions will have to become the normal lifestyle for some time at least in Kerala. And this is the challenge now, especially when large number of people are returning from Gulf countries. So suddenly, as I told you some time back, Kinchi, we are under triple lockdown in city of Trivandrum. In our urban areas, we are having a very special problem of large number of infected people from other states, other countries, etc. coming. But we are very confident that we'll be able to manage it. There is no panic over here because the system is in place. The panchayat is in place. The health system is in place. Large number of volunteers are in place. More than 300,000 volunteers have registered, and they are all available for kind of supporting the government in their initiative. The existing culture of ever-increasing global production and consumption of goods and services, a new slogan of produce locally and consume locally will have to be accepted. MP is going back to his original thing. He is saying that it's okay, but in the long run, you will have to kind of reduce your consumption. As we were discussing in the last session, you will have to oppose the industrialism and many self-restrictions will have to be imposed. This is an opportunity to bring in that. Technology is to make small not only beautiful but also powerful. That's a very important thing which MP has been always repeating. Small has not only to be beautiful, it has to be powerful. And he's saying that technology can be in that manner. It can be powerful. Technology has to be used, but it has to be technology which is beautiful and powerful at the local level. It's not the huge industrializing technology. So he is saying that this is the time to rethink about this beautiful and powerful small. That will have to be developed. A new culture which values leisure and freedom from alienation more than production and consumption will have to be developed. Very similar to what Sujit, Pallavi and Mohan Bhai were mentioning in their previous session. A new world picture of horizontally interconnected system of tens of thousands of self-reliant and increasingly self-reliant villages and local economies will have to be. Urban Republic is a very intimate thing for MP. He always talks about urban republics, rural, urban, that is urban, freed from the straitjacket of nationalism. It has to be conceived and promoted. The cultural life in such a world will become increasingly diverse as well as global, with increased use of cyberspace. He's also talking about the use of cyberspace. The effective and creative use of cyberspace, according to him, is giving a lot of space for local cultural expression. It should not be the top to bottom kind of situation. It should be kind of local culture getting expressed through the new cyberspace system. A hardwired global economic system can develop to dictatorship, he is warning, in politics and instability in economy also. So one has to be cautious about the present success of Kerala in restricting the threat of COVID-19 is at a very high cost. The smallest relaxation on restrictions allowed a dramatic increase in infection. That is our present experience. So one has to, and the restriction will have to be kind of self-imposed. That's very important. It's not the restrictions imposed from top will be short-lived. So how do you kind of develop self-restriction is a question that we will have to deal with. The only way to restrict a flaring up is to increase the local production. He is talking about the local self-reliance, local production, local consumption, local distribution. And fortunately, the present Kerala government has decided to give a big thrust on agriculture, local agriculture. All panchayats have been asked to take up a program to kind of do agriculture in all the panchayats, a major program, and with a large number of voluntary forces coming into action. And work has already started. It gives us a lot of hope. Global eradication of COVID is much more difficult than that of smallpox, plague, or polio, even after successful development of vaccine. So he's saying that we have hard times, but at the same time, with a lot of emphasis on local self-reliance economy, we will be able to kind of overcome this. And the Kerala model, with all limitations, is providing us with a lot of hope. Thank you.
Well, thank you, KK, for telling us the summary of MP's views. MP prepared this paper for this for the discussion this time, and actually he came in 2018 to the 5th South Forum on Sustainability, where he was a keynote speaker. And if you can find his papers in the library on that one, but also we are also reproducing them on the reader for this forum. So I would like to invite Thankamma RADHAMONY to speak to us. Thankamma. Yes, so Thankamma is from the Devaki Warrior Memorial Women's Studies and Empowerment Center.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I am going to present about the health infrastructure in Kerala, which has enabled the Kerala government to fight the COVID-19 attack. As everybody knows, Kerala is very different from other states of India. And we have got a very good health system here. Earlier, when KSSP had conducted a survey, only 23% of the population was using the government facilities. But now, in a recent survey, we have seen that it has increased to 43%. That is 43% of the population of Kerala, mostly poor people, they depend upon the government health system for their treatment. The budget allotment for the health wing in Kerala is 6.5%, which is very high when compared to the union budget or the budget in other states. So we have got a very strong health system here. As I already said, we started the fight against COVID-19 even in 2019, when we heard that there is such a pandemic coming in China. We started to train our staff, give training to our staff, get enough medicine for testing, and everything was, we were ready, because we know, the government of Kerala know that the people of Kerala are all over the world. They are in China also. So as it was going on, the first case of COVID-19 was reported in Kerala. It was in January 26, 2020. A medical student who was studying in Wuhan, who came back when Wuhan was closed, was tested positive. But it was admitted to the hospital, given first-class care, and there was nothing to worry, because there were 3 students. All of them were cured of the disease. Then we had an experience of the Nipah here. Last year, the Nipah virus attacked some region. It was only regional, not like the COVID-19. It was in Calicut, Kozhikode city. And there we were able to control it without spreading to any other part, without very minimum life was lost due to it. So we had that experience, and with that experience, we arranged everything. The health department arranged everything to fight the COVID-19. Our health system, we are having but the public health centers. Now the government is trying to change it to family health centers, and some the public health centers are there in every village, and some 170 of them have been converted into community, into family health centers. And in this public health center, you get all the initial checking up, treatment. The doctor is there, the nurse is here. Only there is no facility to get admitted into the hospital. Only OP treatment is there. But that treatment is available to every citizen free of cost in the public health center. Then the next is community health center. In the community health center, it is there in every block. The PS center is in every village. It is there in every block. There you have got inpatient facility also for cases which don't require the medical college or such attention. They are given admission there. Even deliveries are also being attended by community health centers. Then we have got the taluk hospitals and district hospitals, and of course medical colleges. All these facilities are almost available on free of cost. Only very low amount is being charged from the patients. It is almost free. And so the health of Kerala is being very, very well looked after by our health system. And our doctors, our nurses, our paramedical staff, all of them are very efficient, very dedicated, and now the government is giving them full support. And so they are actually doing hard work in the medical sector. When the COVID-19 epidemic came, actually, we know Kerala has got so many patients outside Kerala. Non-resident Keralites are there all over the world. But we were able to control the epidemic and flatten the curve by the end of May. But in June, the lockdown was almost withdrawn. Everything was open, and people started coming to Kerala either by flight, train, and other vehicles. As we see, the people who come from other parts, they were already infected, or they were infected during the travel, like that. So the cases here got up. But we have got a very good system of controlling the disease. The system is trace, quarantine, test, isolate, and treat. That is the strategy taken by our health department. How we trace every person who come here? Every person who comes to Kerala has to register in the website of NORCA. NORCA means non-resident Keralites all over the world. It is an organization. So they have to register in the website of NORCA. But once a person who had registered in the website of NORCA lands in Kerala either by air or by train or by other private vehicle, they are traced. They are contacted, and they are compelled to go to 14 days quarantine. There are several types of quarantine available here. Home quarantine is given to almost all the persons who have got a facility in the home, an attached bathroom, a very ventilated room, and no aged or children in the home. And such people are allowed to be in their home as in quarantine. Then for those who are not such facilities, the government has arranged quarantine facilities. In the quarantine facility center also, everything is free for them. Every facility there is given free to them. Then there are paid quarantine also. So people who are well off, who are financially well off, they can have paid quarantine in hotels, 5-star hotels also. They are also compelled to take such quarantine people there, and the government owned hotels are there. Public sector is there in every field in Kerala. So hotels are there owned by the tourism department of Kerala, all those things, they are getting paid quarantine people into the hotel. So after quarantine, if somebody develops any sign of disease, they are then admitted to the hospital, tested, and if they are test positive, the treatment starts. Otherwise, if the test is negative, they are discharged. Like that, every person who comes from any other place to Kerala is under constant watch. And who is doing this watch? This watch is doing by the local Asha worker. Asha means accredited social health activist. That is 6,000 women all over Kerala are Asha workers. They are there in the field to trace everybody who comes in from any other state or any other place. Then there is the local self-government, the elected representative of the people of the area, the local self-government member who is there along with the Asha worker. Then the police department, they are there with all the help to get the people to quarantine. And there is a small group in every village who can monitor the quarantine people and make sure that 100% of the people are under quarantine, and also that they are getting every facility during their quarantine period. So such a thing is there in the grassroots level. Then when they are admitted to hospital, as you know, everything on COVID-19 treatment is free in Kerala. The testing, the treatment, however costly it is, ventilator facility, everything is given to the patient free of cost. Nobody has to pay, whether they are rich, poor, there is no difference. Nobody needs to pay anything for COVID-19 treatment. That is one of the major reasons that 100% is being treated. 100% is being treated free without charging anything. That is the basic thing where Kerala is different from other states, other countries. Then after the treatment, etc., there is another quarantine also in Kerala. That is reverse quarantine. In the reverse quarantine, the people above 65 years of age and children and those who are ill or having any other disease like diabetes, pressure, or some disability, any other disability, cancer, such diseases, they are compelled to be under reverse quarantine. They have to remain in the home. Everything that they want will be provided to them in the house. And the charge of this reverse quarantine is with the Anganwadi staff. Anganwadi, it's the Government of India project. It is available all over Kerala, all over India almost, all over India. And the staff, they usually look after the children in the area. Now they are looking after the children, the old age and the disabled. This reverse quarantine has helped very much because COVID-19 is fatal to all these people. Whoever is fatal, all those people are under reverse quarantine in Kerala. And that is being very much giving very good results also. Then after this, we know there is a very good campaign going on, how people should behave. For example, break the chain. When the disease started going into chain reaction like that, then we started the campaign, break the chain. Washing the hands, using the mask, using sanitizer, and having a social distancing. All these things were given to the minds of every people. Our health minister, everybody came in every media and talked to people about the importance of this social distancing, mask, hand washing, and the sanitizer, use of the sanitizer. And people know that, and it is almost sure that if 100% of the population wears the mask properly, I mean because some are not using it properly, or if they cover their mouth and nose with the mask, if 100% of the population doing that, we are sure that the incidence of COVID-19 can be reduced or nullified. So that type of campaign is going on in our state, and it goes to because everybody is educated, almost everybody is literate, everybody is educated. So it is easy to have a campaign also, because you can give leaflets. The media is giving so many, like all the media is cooperating here. The media is always cooperating with government in the case of the fight against COVID. Then there is a very strong public distribution system here. Though everybody is under the public distribution, every household is having a ration card. And through that public distribution system, the government can distribute enough of rice and other cereals to all the families, free of cost, of course. And even people who are not able to cook the food, they were given food under the community kitchen scheme. These community kitchens, it is, I think, more than 7,000 all over Kerala at that time. It was under the management of the local self-government, Panchayat we called, and the Panchayats. And the government made sure that nobody is starving in Kerala. Because of the pandemic, because of COVID, because of the lockdown, nobody is starving in Kerala. That is made sure by the contribution of the Kudumbasri. Kudumbasri is a self-help group of women in Kerala. So they were in the forefront to cook the food. Our volunteers, more than 3 lakhs youngsters had registered as volunteers. Our volunteers were there to get the food to anybody who is needed. It is in old age people in the house or a beggar in the street. Everybody was given food, and nobody was under hunger in Kerala. So with all these things, we were going on, but now the cases are multiplying because of the people coming from outside. And so we have started more tests, antibody tests, rapid tests, etc. to locate the patients, and to also the transmission of, to reduce the transmission of the disease. And we are sure that with the help of all our police, they are doing a very good work, the police of Kerala. And with all this, we are sure that we will conquer the pandemic, even if a vaccine or a medicine is not coming early. We are waiting for that. We are expecting it, but we are not sure when it will come. But even without that, we are sure that we will conquer the COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Actually, when I was in Kerala, I think I went there maybe about 10 times, 20 to 15 years ago. And then it's always the numbers that were so inspiring. So this time, just now, you said you have 300,000 volunteers. And I can imagine what you would say. MP would say, oh, there's only 1% of our population. So anyway, I think what we have here is over 60 years of work by the KSSP, and also a lot of community building. So this mobilization of volunteers and is not from 1 or 2 months. So now we would like to invite TG T. Darren to talk to tell us about what's happening. So TG, he is the former president of KSSP and also the former general secretary of the All India People's Science Network. By profession, he is he was a school principal. He's now retired, and he now still resides in Kerala. So TG, over to you.
Very good evening to all of you. I hope I am audible. All of you may be knowing, at least some of you may be knowing, that Kerala state of India has got a very strong local government system. Maybe perhaps rank number 1 in the country. And here also, in the COVID-19 situation, it is reigning the central position in the mitigation process. How it is being done by the local government is the subject of my brief talk to you. 25 years back, we had a very special program for decentralization. It's called People's Planning Campaign. For the last 25 years, we have been continuously developing on that, and as a result, the local governments of Kerala, the rural as well as urban, have become the strongest local governments in the country. For the last 4 years, we have been facing a lot of disasters, natural disasters as well as medical disasters. In 2017, we had Nipah, 18 and 19, we had floods, and this year we are having COVID-19. I would say in all these situations, the local governments of Kerala have been in a central position. And here also it repeats. I'll brief you. The whole thing now, the whole mitigation process is orchestrated between 4 government departments. That is, number 1, health department, number 2, the local government department, and number 3, the police department, home department, and 4 is the revenue department for civil administration. All these 4 departments work in a very orchestrated way. And in all these 4, the local governments are functioning at the most grassroots level. So that is a peculiarity of the local government system. And I will tell you briefly some 12 points where the local governments are intervening, how they are doing this task. Number 1, Dhadhamoni has been saying about the health system. The lowest tier of the health system is at the ward level. Ward means the constituency in the local government. All the constituencies in the local government we call ward. And in Kerala, the local government constituencies are normally for 500 families. At that level, we have a people's committee headed by the Asha Workers, that's the lowest tier of health workers, supported by the local government representative. And right now, this committee is called RRT, that is the Rapid Response Team, because for everything related to COVID-19 mitigation, people are approaching this committee and they are responding in various ways for collecting data, for giving information to the people, propagation of many things in the field. So this committee, this people committee called the Rapid Response Team, is the kingpin of the whole campaign for mitigation of COVID-19. This is number 1. Number 2, the local governments are responsible to identify the location, the building, the facilities for quarantine, public quarantine system, as well as the first line treatment centers. The first line treatment centers, we mean it that the patients who become positive for COVID are separated into 2. Patients with very mild symptoms and patients severely affected. Patients with mild symptoms are not admitted to hospital. They are taken to a separate facility called first line treatment centers. In every local government, the local governments are identifying public quarantine facilities as well as the FLTC, the first line treatment systems. So this is number 2. If you go to any local government, panchayat or municipality, anywhere in Kerala, you can see these 2 types of facilities. So we have no dearth of facilities for quarantine. Number 3 is the day-to-day running of the public quarantine centers and FLTCs. What we mean by day-to-day running? There are people, patients, admitted in quarantine, public quarantine centers, as well as admitted in the first-line treatment centers. They have to be given food. Maybe many of the people admitted to the quarantine centers have to be given medicine which they are taking continuously. Many other facilities also have to be provided. So the local governments are in charge of running all these centers. All these centers mean at least one center in a local government. And totally it may come to around 3,000 centers. All are run by the local governments. The food is provided, only cooked food. Cooked food is provided to each and every people who are quarantined as well as who are admitted to the first line treatment centers. So this is number 3. And number 4 comes to some administrative matters. If anybody who is residing outside Kerala wants to come to his village or his home, he has to get a permit. That permit is issued by the local government. First, this person who are willing to come to the native state, they have to register on a separate portal of the government. It is called COVID Jagrata portal. And when it is registered, the concerned local government will get the information of such and such person from this locality has registered. And then they have to make an inquiry about the facility at his home. And if they are satisfied, they will give information to the person that he can come. For that, the local government will issue a permit. Without getting the permit, that person cannot leave the present accommodation. Then only with this permit, he will come to the border of the state and he or she can enter the state. So this permit is issued by the local government. Number 5, running community kitchen. What do you mean by community kitchen? There are a lot of people who are not in a position to take food from their home. Maybe migrant laborers, maybe stranded people, so many people are there. And food and some other facilities for these people have to be given by the local government. And for this purpose, every local government has been running at least one public kitchen, one community kitchen. We call it community kitchen because all the expenses of this kitchen is borne by the community, not the government. Government is giving some facility because they are providing only rice. All the vegetables and other eatables have to be mobilized locally, and this is done by the local government. Lot of sponsorship is received by the local government for this purpose. So running the community kitchen is number 5. Then comes number 6, arranging food for standard pet animals and stray animals. This is something to be noted. We take care of not only human beings, but also animals who are stranded, who doesn't have anybody to look after them during the lockdown period. So the local government is responsible to prepare food, cook the food, and supply to the stranded animals whenever they get information from the field. The Asha workers or the local health workers or the local people will call the local government people. There are two dogs here or 5 pigs here. They don't have any food. Then the people from local government will arrange food for these stranded animals. This is something we noted. And this is number 6. Number 7, community surveillance. Community surveillance. Lakhs and lakhs of people are coming to Kerala from abroad as well as from other states of the country. And we have to ensure that these people are not going outside without permission. And that surveillance is the responsibility of the local government. Whenever a person, maybe with a positive case or negative case, maybe, he will be quarantined. He or she will be quarantined either at his own home or at public quarantine places. Then the community has to look after whether these persons are going outside without any permission, then that information will be provided by the local government to the police authority so that case will be taken out. This community surveillance is number 7. Number 8 is keeping essential supply chain on containment zone. Containment zone means in the area people cannot go out or come in. That is contained, totally contained. In such situation, the people may require a lot of things, food materials, medicine, so many things. Then local governments provide certain phone numbers. If you want food, just telephone to this number. If you want medicine, just telephone to this number. If you have any other problem, just phone. Then the local government will provide all the materials according to the demand of the people. This supply chain the local government has to maintain. Number 9 is distribution of social welfare pensions. One prime concern of the government in the initial stages was there should be some money with the people to mitigate the situation. So the government at an emergency distributed all types of pension and government support to the people. It comes to around 49 lakhs families in the state. Within 1 week's time, it was distributed all over the state with the supervision of the local government. So this is number 9. Number 10 comes to distribution of food kits. 2 times food kits were distributed to each and every family. One from the central government. It was sponsored by the central government, and second by the state government. The state government gave it first, and then came the central government kit. Both these work were taken up by the local governments, and without any complaint, all the families, about 80 lakhs families, 8 million families in the state has got all the materials supplied without any complaint. Now I'll go to number 11, selection of community volunteers. Even now we are anticipating a social transmission scenario in the state. If such thing happens, we require lakhs of volunteers to be provided for various services. So government of Kerala has decided to select 0.35 million volunteers to work in all over the state. And these volunteers, male and female, are selected by the local governments and recommended to the health department, and thereafter the government.
So TG was talking about the 350,000 volunteers that are being mobilized as community volunteers. And then all these volunteers, they're selected by the local governance communities, and then they go through a training by the health department. And then it's also the local the self-governments to do all the sanitation of the public places. So we thank TG for giving us all these details, because we always say the devil is in the details and how this is being carried out. And I think the one main feature that we could see from the way it is the pandemic is being dealt with in Kerala is that it's not imposed from above by the state or by the police, because in many other places in India and also in the world, we see there's the strengthening of state power, and which has also fueled a lot of resistance from the people. And yet, what TG has been telling us is the way in which the already organized communities manage to come together, and then there has been a long tradition of voluntary work. And so just imagine if you have to employ and pay the salaries of 350,000 people. So what I think there will be all the debt and all the other problems. But then in Kerala, there is this long tradition of voluntary work, and that is also how we have been hearing all these stories. So Kerala has actually emerged a second time this time to be called the Kerala model, and I think the state government has also been promoting the Kerala dialogue. So you could Google Kerala dialogue and then hear what the government and also what the different volunteer groups have to say. So we thank TG, and we would now like to invite Minnie Sukuma from the University of Calicut. She will tell us something about the situation of women. So Minnie has been teaching women's studies in the Department of Women's Studies, and she has also been part of the women's movement and progressive social movements. She was formerly in the executive committee of the Indian Association for Women's Studies, and she has been writing columns and presenting television shows, and she's also part of a small feminist publishing house called Women's Imprint. So now over to you, Minnie.
And good evening, everybody. And thank you, Kinji and the members of the Global University for giving me this opportunity for participating in this webinar. I am really honored to have part of this seminar. So I'm talking about the COVID pandemic, the containment of COVID pandemic, and the role of women and women's networks in that process. And also I will be trying a little bit to analyze how this entire women's networks are working and in Kerala. And already it was talked about RADHAMONY, and TG has already given a background about the women, the Kudumbashree, Asha Worker and the Anganwadi, how they are incorporated into the local government system and to the community networks. And Kerala has entered the third phase of confronting the COVID pandemic with a total confirmed case of 2,252 till yesterday. And the combating strategy of Kerala state has been widely appreciated and documented. The local governments are considered as the strength of this strategy. So we can say that tell us the story, community and community networks are central. In maintaining the community networks, women's labor and their participation play the most important role. That is evolved through a specific socio-historical process of modernizing the Kerala society. I think the KK will elaborate on that. And the work of women's movements and the process of state-initiated gender mainstreaming programs over the years. And Kerala is known for its gender development achievements in high literacy rates, that's almost 92%, and education of women, higher reproductive health indicators like lower maternal and infant mortality rates, higher sex ratio, and higher longevity, so on and so forth. But the state presents a paradoxical picture in other aspects of gender, such as lower participation rates in labor force and lower participation in the political sphere, etc. And limited autonomy in personal choices, erosion of property rights, and increasing incidence of violence, gendered violence are other matters of concern. Despite these contradictory macro patterns related to women's status in the state, the local level development and governance scenario presents a picture of vibrant participation of women. The pandemic containment strategy of Kerala has placed into the social networking of women at the grassroots level through certain government programs implemented in the community, especially with women's participation. Specifically, it is successful with women's participation. I will try to present a picture of that process. The local development context, the notion of the public can be visualized as a democratically negotiated and also an inclusive collective space for a local specific development agenda. The decentralization process in Kerala provided an enabling environment for women's participation in local planning. The gender responsive planning and governance practice gradually evolved through that process. This increased participation of women through various activities related to decentralized development, the formation of women's networks through women SNGs, that is Kudumbashree, and the women's involvement in development projects and village assemblies marked the claiming of agency and an effort to transform the village social space. The presence of higher proportion of adult females with secondary or higher education in the society is an important factor that enabled this transformation. On the other side, the higher rates of unemployment among educated women and patriarchal controls over their choice of employment and mobility restrictions made them available in the village social space for taking up the semi-voluntary work for the community. So this is the picture. It has two aspects. As far as my concern, it has two aspects. I discussed 3 government programs of women and its volunteers. The one represents the welfare regime, that is the Anganwadi, and the other 2 represent the gender mainstreaming and community participation models of development, the Asha and Kudumbashree. They are important in maintaining the social networks at the local grassroots level. These programs are: one, the Anganwadi workers in integrated child development services, and the Kudumbashree, the women SNG network, and Asha, the accredited social health activist in National Health Mission. These 3 groups of women working at the community level, more effectively at the rural level, are involved in various activities. The activities are already enlisted here by the other speakers, so I am not repeating it. And another aspect of my discussion is about the working women, the situation of working women in formal and informal sectors, the daily wage workers, the street vendors, women in small enterprises, sales girls, nurses, and other health workers. Regarding this work of the Anganwadi women, we can see that there is a vast network of 115 Anganwadi centers working in the state. Most of these centers are located in the neighborhood and catering a population of around 800 to 1,000 people. And these centers are generally run by 2 women, the Anganwadi worker and the helper. During the decentralization process in Kerala, these Anganwadi workers and centers became community centers to disseminate and coordinate the activities of LSGIs, the local self-governments, and the communication networks already established by these women was used to mobilize women into neighborhood-based self-help groups. So during the initial stages of the decentralization process, the Anganwadi workers and the Anganwadi centers were the nerve centers of mobilization of women. The community-based database, which was kept in the Anganwadi as part of their duty, and their reach into the communities, especially the economically poor and marginalized households, are used to identify the high-risk groups of aged people, children, pregnant women, and people with disabilities, and also to create awareness about the disease and prevention control, and to identify people with travel history and monitoring the home quarantine during this COVID situation. So the already established network and the database and the efficiency of the Anganwadis are creatively incorporated into the work of containing the pandemic. The labor of Anganwadi workers is very significant in the sustainability of the communities, and it is envisaged as a support system for the women in communities, like a child care service for women who are working in the wage labor, and also for supplementary nutritional support for adolescent, pregnant women, and the aged people. So these Anganwadi centers are very much attached to the neighborhood or the community. They are like, the Anganwadi workers are like paid volunteers working full time but paid with smaller honorarium. The networking they created with women through constant interactions, sharing the responsibility of childcare, giving advice in healthcare and sexuality, matters related to sexuality and contraception and such things, adolescent education, and now the elderly care are the important aspects of their relationship with women in the community. And Anganwadis are sharing the care work of women through a governmental scheme and gain the acceptance as community contact points for these women, mostly from the economically poor and the marginalized communities. For the local governance system, the network of Anganwadis and their communication channels are most effective for coordination of development and welfare activities. So Anganwadis are considered as the centers who are coordinating this type of works. And coming to the Asha, the accredited social health activists, they are generally called the Asha Workers, are part of the National Health Mission, another central government program which is meant as a bridge between government and the formal health system and the people, the government health system and the people. And the Asha worker, one Asha worker is for 1,000 population. That is their arrangement. And they are in the multiple, the Asha workers are in the multiple roles of healthcare facilitators, health activists, and service providers. And this is the pattern, the national pattern. And in Kerala, they are part of the local health committees and projects, working in coordination with primary health centers and local self-governments, working in coordination with the primary health centers and local self-governments. And they are working with the palliative care, community-based mental health program, and identification and control of non-communicable diseases. This palliative care program and community-based mental health program are projects initiated by the local self-governments and working very successfully at the grassroots level. In the pre-COVID days, the Asha workers were not seen very important, apart from utilizing their services in disease control and palliative care. They are like a support service or not that much significant, having that much significance. Now they have turned as frontline workers. Their networking and communication channels in the community and the database they hold became important in dealing with the situation. The Asha workers are also working as paid volunteers, getting smaller honorarium, which is lower than the honorarium of the Anganwadi workers. And then the Kudumbashree, the largest women neighborhood self-help group network. The Kudumbashree Women SHG network, the self-help group network, and its institutional setup are considered as the central pillar of pandemic containment strategy at local level. It is a network of women from almost 43 lakh households, mainly from the lower income groups. Kudumbashree was ready to respond to the situation with their experience in mobilizing women during the disaster situation in the floods in the last 2 years. So they are already equipped with how to respond to a crisis situation. Mobilization of women through Kudumbashree network was started as a state engineered program with a primary objective of eradicating poverty during the initial phase of the decentralization process in Kerala. It had a more important functional priority. When it is started at that time, it had a more important functional priority of creating an extensive statewide network of women, the women who are presumed out of or rather not active in wage labor. These women were the targets. And as a support structure for mobilizing volunteer work that is inevitable for making the decentralization process a success. And at that time, the formal panchayat system or the government system is not equipped to hold the entire burden of the decentralization process. So there is a lot of volunteerism was there, as Kinji suggested, and it is mobilized by the left-leaning political parties and also with the local participation and KSSP and organizations like KSSP And when the Kudumbashree setup was in force, it is envisaged as a support system to the local self-government. And evolution, functioning and structural complementarity of the local self-governments and the Kudumbashree network were officially recognized and institutionalized. But Kudumbashree is not considered as an entirely a government program or an NGO network, even though it is initiated by the government. It significantly transformed the village social space with a strong presence of women and their labor, as well as created a micro-level interpersonal network of women. That is the success of Kudumbashree. And personal contacts are crucial in building up these networks because these networks are organized in neighborhoods. Also, Kudumbashree is located in the history that is intertwined with the experience of Kerala model development, emergence of feminist politics, and the role played by the Women in Total Literacy program that is initiated by the Kerala Sastra Sahitya Parishad, KSSP, in the 1990s. The women's role in Total Literacy program, Total Literacy campaign as volunteer instructors of the local learning centers in the neighborhoods were very crucial. These women volunteers who were withdrawn after the Total Literacy campaign for lack of social space were happy to continue their community work when decentralization process, the campaign, People's Campaign started. They were naturally considered as a ready reserve to organize together at local level, and they mobilized women into SHG networks and for other activities at local level. This has grown over the years as a forum of women at local level, capable of making their presence in social and economic scene of the village. And during this time, the 1990s was important for the emergence of feminist politics in Kerala. Also, the question of the social backwardness of women and the feminist questions about the Kerala society were all raised during that period. That also made an impact on the policy making. All these three sets of women and the networks created by them are in fact overlapping networks that leads to a micro-level governance system based on governmental initiatives and a higher level of volunteerism at community level. At community level participation of various political parties and community organizations. So we can see that there's an overlapping networking of women from the three sets, and also there are women from the political parties and other organizations, and men also from other organizations from various political parties, and the greater participation of community organizations. The macro linkage of policies and programs made the state strategy effective, and the bridging function is provided locally by the local self-governments. The importance of local self-government institutions is that they are providing the bridging function between the micro-level networks and the macro-level policies. And analyzing this from a comparative framework of gender, politics, and governance, and using the basic objectives of state feminism, Kerala presents a successful example of building up a gender-friendly policy and state institutions and an alternative governance or institutional structure of participatory democracy in response to the weakening of welfare in the time of neoliberal economic reform. So for this alternative institutional or governance system, women and women's networks play a crucial role. But at the same time, we have to attempt or to understand one question or one concern, that whether this new method of organizing women in neighborhood groups help to transform the social spaces to gender-friendly spaces and to establish autonomy in life choices of women. Whether it has any effect upon the patriarchal setup and the conventional parameters of our social life. That's a question still remaining here to answer. Women are, in fact, women are reboosting the Kerala model that faces problems of sustainability by providing a large amount of voluntary work and public care activities through unpaid and underpaid labor. Women are getting social acceptance, recognition, and respect for the community and small from the community. And also we can see a small change in the inclusion of women into local level committees of political parties. So women are getting in return this acceptance and social recognition. And we can see that the creation of a gender capital can be acknowledged at this moment. And coming to the situation of working women, the situation of working women, both in formal and informal sector, may be submerged within the dominant narrative of successful women's networks. The key concerns regarding women's employment in Kerala are: one, the lower work participation rates and shrinking labor force, both in employed and unemployed sections; and two, the nature and quality of work they are doing, especially in the unorganized women workers; and three, the working conditions of care workers. So we are witnessing various agitations during the last few years regarding the working conditions and labor conditions and sexual harassment at workplace related to the unorganized sector. And all these three sets, the earlier mentioned three sets of women, the Anganwadi, Asha and Kudumbashree, are either underpaid or unpaid for their labor. That's also a fact. They are considered voluntary work. These are considered voluntary work or community service, which is in fact providing public care that involved human labor. They are not recognized as workers and not entitled for minimum wages because they are not workers. They are either they are not workers nor as volunteers. They are in between. In a patriarchal society, they are already under triple burden of gender roles in family and community, and now the state is also there. Many of these women in Kudumbashree were engaged in various income generation activities but lost those options during this lockdown period. Government loan schemes to ensure liquidity for the low income groups, which is a very positive measure from the government, are introduced through Kudumbashree SHGs, but that make women the primary borrowers. The credit load is already high among the lower income group of women, and certain micro level studies shows that women became the primary debt managers in poor and lower middle class families. That's another side of the story. And the livelihood crisis is high among women in unorganized sector, especially the small vendors, the fish vendors, women in cottage industries, and domestic workers. A large section of women are working in unorganized schools and other educational institutions, private establishments, business establishments, sales and small enterprises. Most of these establishments are closed or reduced their activities and salaries are not paid. There are reports of increasing crimes and domestic violence during this crisis period. And we can see that the intersectional issues of gender have not gained in importance in the pandemic containment strategies. These are immediate concerns to be addressed from a gender planning perspective. And another sector, the nurses, doctors, health workers, sanitation workers, and women in police force are in the frontline team of the operational side of the pandemic response. The Kerala nurses and their efficiency have won acclaims globally and locally. They are now working under severe workload, and their working conditions need a relooking from the gender perspective. They lack representation in policy making and decision making bodies. These are certain areas that need more thinking, intervention, policies, and new programs in terms of gender in Kerala. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mini, because these are always the old questions that we face under the patriarchal system. So what women have been always doing is there's a lot of sacrifice, and but of course now because they are also made very visible because of all the work they're doing, so they have got more social recognition. But then how we could be furthering the cause of on gender equality and equity. So there is still a lot. There are still a lot of contradictions. But that is also why we try to give weight to feminist perspectives. And so after the main forum of the 10th to 12th. We are going to have 2 full days, which is on 14th and 15th, which will deal with the questions of feminist perspectives. So thank you very much, Minnie. And now we have come to our final speaker, KK Krishna Kumar. So we call him KK. And well, when I first came to know him, then I learned that he's an engineer by profession, but then he's also one of the most ordinary and also extraordinary persons, because he was not gaining profits by his profession, which he could have done, but then he has been a dedicated member of the People's Science movement, working in the villages all his life, and helping villagers to improve on their local watersheds, on the local appropriate technology. So he's been involved in the People's Science movement for over 40 years, and involved in various people's education and empowerment programs and projects. And he has been secretary and then the president of the BGVS, which is the Knowledge and Wisdom Society in Kerala, but also involved also with the India People's Science Network. And he has written about 30 books in Malayalam, mostly on popular science topics. So now over to you, KK.
Okay. I know there's not much time. I don't want to kind of repeat things. Many important points have been covered. I only want to say 3-4 important points. One, there is always a tendency among people in general and Keralites especially to kind of romanticize the Kerala, over-romanticize the Kerala model. So I want to say that there are good things that we have done. There is hope, but there are several challenges and problems. Second thing is, this is not some policy magic which has happened overnight. It has a history of several decades, going through several movements. Like Newton said, we are able to do a little better because we are standing on the shoulders of giants. So there have been several movements. I won't go into the details, starting from 19th century, where the social reform movements, especially against the casteism, which is the Indian brand of racism, which is still seen in different forms in different parts of the country. So Kerala was, especially a person called Sri Narayana Guru, he's called. He led a movement against the upper caste dominance. That was the beginning. The most interesting thing is that he was, even though he was a spiritual leader, he gave a lot of importance to two things. He said, no, you should educate yourself and organize to fight against. So there cannot be any opposition of these hierarchies unless you educate yourself and organize. Come and organize, come and educate yourself and the entire community. Fortunately, this slogan of Sri Narayana was taken up by almost all movements which followed. There were several things. There was this two streams, Gandhian and later Marxian streams, which merged into our freedom movement. They have helped the left politics, which organized the unorganized, especially workers in the emerging factories and also agrarian workers. And most of you know about the agrarian reforms that took place in Kerala, which is still under the that one of the basic planks of Kerala. This thing, all this, and later, many things like see, we have a very unique library movement about which Kinchi was mentioning. It is absolutely unique. At one point of time, especially, it has lost a little bit of its luster. At present, it has to be modernized. There are many things that have to be modernized in Kerala. there are old stories and retrospectives which have to be kind of pulled and redone, including the left, in my opinion. Unless you keep on, we become very homesick about old stories, and old stories without continuously kind of redoing, revisiting, re-engineering will sometimes become useless. So libraries, we have large number of libraries, something like 8,000, 9,000 libraries. Every village in Kerala has a library, and these libraries are built up by the people, the volunteers, the village rural libraries. They are village rural libraries built by the social groups there, political groups there, some part of the freedom movement, some part of the left movement, some part of the agrarian movement. So they played a very important cultural role, not only spreading the culture of reading. It became adult education centers. It also became what they call discussion centers. Many political movements started there. Nerve centers of what they call cultural action, political action at one point of time. And later, the People's Science Movement, PSM, of which KSSP is a part, was also an important product of a byproduct of this ongoing story of community resurgence. And now, we made some very interesting experiments. Kerala KSSP, of which all of us, most of us who are sitting here from Kerala, have all been part of that. We were able to play an important role in the literacy movement. Literacy movement was very different. The Kerala literacy movement, which became a model for India, was very important because it was not a government program. It taught us many lessons. In Kerala, we have been, whenever successful things have happened, two important streams have worked together: the government and the people. People create the government, but when after the election is over, government becomes something else, so different and distant from the people. We have been able to kind of on several occasions catch them back and handhold the government and work together, because we have to handhold them, because all these equipments are with them, all the services are with them, all the methodologies and mechanisms and departments. Why should we just leave them to some vested interest? So people have been working with the government. These participatory processes in Kerala have been processes where people have been working with government systems, not always at the terms of the government. It has been at the terms of the people that the governments have been working. These are interesting changes in the attitude. For example, the literacy movement, where initially it came from the national government, they had formulated the entire thing. But when it came to us, we said, no, we will transform it, and we will be willing to become a partner if it functions under our terms. So it was not a paid program. We called it at that time a patriotic program, where large number of volunteers. The first time after the freedom revolution, freedom movement, so many volunteers came into the literacy program. The government did not even expect that so much of volunteerism is possible in the kind of this thing. The literacy movement succeeded simply because of the voluntary process. More than 200,000 volunteers, most of them women, without even taking a pie, they came and started working for the literacy movement. It became a cultural resurgence. It was not a government program, it became a people's program. So when it becomes a people's program, people provide their creativity. They put their creativity into it. That's the greatness of a people's program. It's no more a government program, a standardized top to bottom. Every village will have its own problems, and they will have their own solutions. So these were interesting. And the government always doesn't take it so lightly. They always try to they know that when people get empowered, they are getting disempowered. So the government has its problems always with it. So it's a dialectical relationship. It's not very smooth and simple. Same thing is even now true. There's a great resurgence. We have been able to kind of make use of the government systems, working with the people, etc., etc. But there are also problems. Government always tends to dictate, bureaucratize, etc., etc. So I am basically talking about the contribution to volunteerism, that the literacy gave an opportunity, and there was a resurgence of the voluntary movement. But unfortunately, we couldn't take it much further. At one point of time, government started understanding the game. Its people are getting empowered. So slowly, literacy went out of their agenda. We can expect that. At one point of time, when people takes hold of things in their hands, government will slowly loosen their grip and they will allow it. So literacy is not an agenda anymore in India now. At one point of time, the national government gave so much importance to literacy, but now they don't. At the same time, India has the largest number of illiterates. The problem is not solved. It's still there. India has the largest number of illiterates. So, similarly, another experiment which we did was the people's planning experiment, about which TG explained. It was another wonderful experiment where large number of volunteers came in. It was a government program. There were all enabling rules and regulations, but government was just kind of sitting over it. We grabbed it and people got into it, and when it became a people's program, it started working. And I won't say that it is all smooth and nice about people's planning. No, there are situations where people's planning was getting bureaucratized. There were lots of creative elements in the people's planning program, but at one point of time, government thought, no, how can you handle the big governance, whether it is local or central to the people? No. So the bureaucratization started. So what I'm trying to say, the people's planning in general was a big success, but at the same time, there were threats, there were vested interests coming in, there were bureaucrats wanting to kind of put it back, etc., etc. So this time, whenever challenges come, when the floods came, the government was not able to operate on its own. So on such situations, you allow a space for voluntary force, people's forces, participation again starts. So this way, again, there was an opportunity for the government and volunteers, people's movements to work together. 2018, 2019, the floods, and even the earlier virus attack, which was localized, Nipah virus. It's a very dangerous virus, but fortunately, because of the great work of the government and people together, it was contained in a small area itself. So all this helped us to kind of redo the people's movement exercise again and again. Every time it was getting threatened, but every time it came back. Now, when the COVID situation came, it was all ready. People's movements, the local self-government was there, but you should remember, it was all not very bright. Kerala has a very good public health system, but we were also facing a major threat from the privatization of health. The private agencies were taking over, but when the COVID situation came, suddenly the public health system became very, very important. Not only public health system became the sole leader of the health system in Kerala. There was not one single private hospital playing any role in the COVID regulation. Actually, large number of huge private hospitals which were making profit were almost closed down. Even now, the private hospitals are almost silent. So the resurgence of the public, not only there were situations where the public distribution system was completely spoiled by the central government. But now, public distribution system became a very important tool in the participatory process. As TG explained, all the families, entire families in Kerala got their free ration twice or thrice. So hunger was not part of this at all. This happened also in the flood situation. So the resurgence of public spaces, the participatory process has been a magnificent thing that has been happening. But there is no guarantee. Unless you are very careful to retain it, strengthen it creatively, I don't have any kind of belief that it will automatically continue. No, it will not. So this COVID situation has given us an opportunity to kind of strengthen it once again, to realize the strength of that. And Kerala has generally been able to kind of make use of. So this way, the control of pandemic happened of two things. One was the educational background. So I would say there are two basic pillars of all that has been going on. One is education, which has been happening over a period of time. And second is the people's participation. So participation, and just not ordinary kind of participation, it has been an extremely creative participation. Unless people are able to participate creatively, the namesake kind of participation will not be of any use. It will die down automatically. Unfortunately, we have not been able to continuously strengthen it. There have been threats. There are two, three things which I say which are very special in Kerala. One is this politics in Kerala. Kerala is highly political, very good at one level. But at the same time, Kerala politics has certain very traditional elements, which, see, the mainstream political parties and their enmity, their what you call rivalry, mutual rivalry, is so intense that even under situations of COVID, they are not able to come together. There are situations, certain things which you must be able to kind of go beyond local politics. But unfortunately, we are facing several situations. The opposition is bent upon blaming the government for little things. There is a necessity for opposition, criticism, etc., etc. But there should also be a limit to kind of such things. Beyond ideology, on certain occasions, you will have to come together. That does not happen, and that is creating a lot of problems. Finding, and that too, see, I don't know, the LDF and UDF, the national context, they are the same against the rightist, what they call Hindutva forces. But in Kerala, they are at loggerheads fighting each other. This has been a big problem. The special problem of Kerala, of what they call the Kerala geography, what MP calls urban, has its positive as well as negative aspects. Kerala is not a village. Kerala doesn't have actually villages in the usual sense. Kerala only is an extended big city. Slowly, all the rural areas are becoming urban areas. So all that we are talking about, the beauty of villages, systems that work in villages, may not be kind of working everywhere in Kerala. And it is at the cultural level, for example, the consumption pattern. Kerala has been a consuming state all the time. And the migration that has been helping Kerala financially has been also contributing to the consumption culture. So these are kind of things which cannot be kind of very easily solved. Even now, even when we have been succeeding continuously on the COVID front, there are issues like, for example, when a small relaxation in the lockdown is allowed, these consumption tendencies suddenly appear in especially in the urban areas. So you will have to kind of really think about new conscientization mechanisms and various other things. So the geography of Kerala, the urban nature, it's not just a geography, it's also the culture. There is no real rural culture in Kerala, even though we may be able to kind of romanticize about that. Kerala is generally following a urban culture, and it has its limitations. Their consumption pattern, if you closely and finally, this is also a basic question of what you call sustainability, climate change, etc., etc. Kerala, unfortunately, even though we have been talking about climate change, sustainability, etc., etc., I won't say that we have fully internalized all that. During the floods of the floods of 18 and 19, there was a lot of talk about kind of climate resilient policies. What they call many things came. Room for river suddenly became what you call rivers have to be preserved. Western Ghat has to be preserved, etc., etc. But all these discussions were very ephemeral, very short-living kind of thing. Suddenly, the vested interests, in collusion with most of the political parties, started the exploitation of nature again, and it's still going on. Even when we were criticizing the central policies in the morning, some of the policies, even though generally Kerala has been against it, there are vested interests which have been siding plundering of our forests and so on and so on. So something has to be done to kind of make the political system, the community system, etc., internalize the sustainability aspect. Because I believe that including COVID, when you finally trace back, we'll have to do a lot with climate change and sustainability factor. So there are opportunities, several opportunities which our history has provided, which our present system is providing, but we should not be satisfied with this. We'll have to be continuously working for creative, collective, decentralized, if possible, as Sujit was mentioning, doing away with nationalism and becoming more and more autonomous. I also, even though it's a dream policy, I definitely completely kind of would like to dream along those lines. But Kerala has all the basics for that. This is a place where experiment can still come. One has to be conscious and confident about it. There is no space for believing that the problem is over. No, the problem is still on, but there is a space, lot of space for continuing in the people's participatory experiment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, KK. I think KK has teased out for us all the complexities. So KK gave us the history of the developments in different phases. And then, of course, then also emphasizing the cultural aspects, so calling this a cultural resurgence. And I think there's also the very important question of reclaiming the public, reclaiming the common. And it was so heartwarming to hear that despite all the privatization of healthcare and also of hospitals, this time it is the public hospitals that has been playing a major role. And we also find similar situations in China, because in the last 2-3 decades, there has been a lot of privatization. And with the privatization of hospitals and healthcare, then then we find that there are certain areas in health that is profitable, but the preventive medicine, the preventive community care, then they are not. That's not profitable, and that's also why the private sector has not been interested in going into that. And so I think there are a lot of similarities between the ways in which Kerala has been dealing with the pandemic and the ways in which China has also been dealing with this. But we will hear more about the situation in China tomorrow. But then, KK talked about warned us against the romanticizing the Kerala model, and I also agree with that. But then I also just now posted the 6 short articles that I wrote on Kerala after I came back in 2003. after all the visits. And so maybe KK will say, tell me that, well, you're romanticizing the Kerala model. But then what I was trying to also talk about is we are trying to draw inspirations from the ways communities have been organizing, but also I don't think we can say that this is romanticizing, because we also look at the many challenges that the communities face. It's not only in terms of the material things, and not only in terms of consumerism and all the urbanization, it's also in terms of the cultural aspects, that we go after modernization, we go after urbanization, and somehow the rural is being seen as backward. And so we need this cultural resurgence to go back to some of the basics, the primary things. So, but then just now from the stories and from the accounts, then we can actually feel this energy from the people. And then all our speakers today, then they have been working for all the whole life in voluntarily, and getting very little pay, and but managing to survive, but then getting a lot of joy and a lot and energy from the work that they do. And I remember MP telling us on the very first trips that we went, when I was taking my students to Kerala, he said, do not feel that when you're doing voluntary work, you are sacrificing. And then you have self-pity for sacrificing, because you don't see yourself as being rewarded by praises and different benefits. Well, you go for that work, you commit to that work because you enjoy it, because you find meaning in that work. And I feel that although our friends from Kerala don't really mention this, but I feel that you have been doing all this voluntary work, including the millions of volunteers that you have, because you believe in it, and because you feel that this is part of a meaningful life, and that you can be contributing to the communities. So since KK also went into the question of the history, then I would also want to say that actually 100 years ago, for a lot of the social thinkers, the very important social thinkers and practitioners that we've had, such as Liang Shumin or Tao Xinzhi, who are the pioneers of the rural reconstruction movement back in the 20s, in the 30s. They also drew a lot of inspiration from India, from Gandhi, from the kind of rural work that was going on at that time. So there was also the story of Tao Xinzhi, who was a very famous educationist in China. Then he managed to have a one-day dialogue with Gandhi, but it happened to be the day when Gandhi couldn't talk. So then he was there, and then they were just writing notes to each other so that they could dialogue. Okay, so now I would like to invite any questions or comments from our audience. So we are actually going over time, but then maybe we could allow ourselves 15 more minutes, just in case you have questions.
One question is, when we keep on hearing about local government, what exactly does it mean? I mean, when we say Gram Panchayat today, who are the local government? That is one question I had. The other was, when we talk about Anganwadi and Asha workers in Kerala, these are all India programs. Is there anything special in Kerala about these two kind of workers, which is different from what is happening in rest of India? And I'll end up with a third question, which is the issues that KK talked about. So migrants, urban culture, consumerism, and therefore more extraction of nature. This is everywhere, but Kerala it is even more. And therefore, when he started by saying what MP wants, the local production, self-sufficiency, I'm just thinking that in our courses of Living Utopias, we talk about people like the Amish who do not consume, even staying within a consumerist society. Or let's say an ideal kibbutz where everything is shared, which is real village level socialism. And has there been thought among people of, in Kerala with all this fantastic volunteer work and innovation, have they thought about doing such experiments, trying them out, or such experiments are going on in Kerala now or not? That's it.
Thank you. So, Minnie, would you come in to talk about the Asha workers in Kerala? And then so whether whether TG or some of you would like to answer these questions.
Okay, I will talk about the second question. That Anganwadi and Asha workers, whether they are different in Kerala. Yeah, sir, it is actually what you suggested is same. The two programs, the Asha workers and the Anganwadi programs, the ICDS, are central schemes, and the general objectives of the schemes are the same. But the one major difference is the functional difference of these two programs in Kerala. And one is that these two programs, like the Asha and the Anganwadi, they are working in coordination with the Panchayati Raj system or the local self-government in Kerala. Because of the transfer of functions and functionaries happened in the Kerala Panchayati Raj Act, the local Anganwadis are working in coordination with the local self-government institutions. They are controlled by the local self-government institutions. Another thing, the Anganwadi workers, they have their tasks which is prescribed in their national level programs. But other than that, in Kerala, they are working as the local coordinators of the developmental programs and also part of many of the committees, part of these working committees, which are part of this local government, local governance, which is part of the Panchayati Raj. That is one thing. And these Asha workers are also, they are working as part of or coordinated with the primary health care, the PHSCs, primary health centers. And also they are part of this working groups of this health. And both these sectors, the Anganwadi workers and the Asha workers, they are getting an additional honorarium from the state government. In the central scheme, the Asha workers are paid for 2,000 rupees for a month as a honorarium, and in Kerala it is 8,000. And like the Anganwadi also, they have a enhanced honorarium, and that is paid by the state government. And they are very much part of all the development programs in the state. And as I said earlier, the Asha workers they have given certain other tasks such as working with the palliative care and looking after the terminally ill people, and also about the mental health programs, coordinating the mental health program, community-based programs like that. Their functions are little bit enhanced or enlarged in the context of the local governance. That is one major difference. And about the local self-government, I think TG is the best person to answer that question.
Thank you. So TG and Thankamma, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. Thank you. I'll start with it. It's the best question. What do you mean by the local governments in Kerala? Is it just like any other local government in the country? Emphatically, no. It is much, much different in Kerala by structure, by powers, by finance, and the functions. Everywhere it is different. In average, a Kerala, we have rural as well as urban, just like everywhere, panchayat and municipalities. A normal gram panchayat, that is the lowest tier, in Kerala is 25 square kilometers in area, 25 to 30,000 population, and the power it is much different. We have devolved powers in 18 subjects out of the 29. 18 subjects are earmarked for gram panchayat, and there are 73 powers, very clear powers are given to our local governments. And they are not on paper. We have all systems to function. That's it. All the officials, all the officers related to this power are transferred to the local governments. This is it. In a Gram Panchayat, at least there will be 7 departmental institutions transferred to the Panchayat. That is Krishi Bhavan, that is Agriculture Office and the staff. Primary Health Center and the total staff. And schools, government schools and the total staff. Anganwadis and the total staff. Veterinary hospital and the total staff. Fisheries office and the staff. So these are the minimum. And there may be in certain places more government institutions and officials will be transferred according to the locality. So this is it. And by finance, our local governments are having their own finance through taxation. I will say Kerala local governments are the only one having financial stability in this way. We are collecting a minimum of 6 types of taxes. 6 types of taxes. So every local government is having own income of 50 lakh, 60 lakh, 1 crore, that sort of money. There are more income also. Second is the money given by the state government through plan grant and other grants. Plan grant, it's a big amount. That totally some 28% of the plan allocation of the state government is clearly earmarked to the local governments. So they are free to use it. The local governments are free to use the government money for development planning for every year. So they can prepare a one-time plan for one complete year at a time. So they are free to implement it there also. There is no threats for that. So financially, by power, by population, by area, by structure, everywhere, the local government of Kerala is very strong. And I have seen the local governments of every state of India. I have visited. And I can clearly tell you that it is much different in Kerala. And please, I will recommend you that I have given a brief paper on the structure of local governments of Kerala in the site. You may please refer to that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And maybe before we ask KK or Thankamma to respond, I think Bidut wanted to say something.
I wanted to start a dialogue with Minnie. Before that, I want to respond to the local government system. We also have been working with local government system for last 28 years. And I find in one respect, all the local government institutions are similar across the board from Kerala, starting from Kerala to UP. The respect for women representatives is nil in spite of local literacy and all that movement. I can vouch for that. Otherwise, women would not have been harassed, undergo mental stress, and suicide rate is very high. That is one. Now, so far as Minnie's dialogue is concerned, I think, I totally agree with you. I have studied once the book, Enigma of Kerala Model. There they say in spite of, high literacy and high employment rate, why do they undergo mental stress and the suicide rate is very high. Now, given the background, different background of Kerala, what is the solution? The Kutumbashree hasn't helped us, neither literacy movement has helped us, nor the local government representation has helped. What is the liberation? What is the way forward? Thank you.
So can I ask each of the speakers to just take 1 minute in responding to some of the issues, and then we will, because I think this whole forum, the idea is that we raise questions, we see which ones should be prioritized, and then we can organize coherent and also systematically the discussions later on. So could I ask each speaker to just have 1 minute? So who's coming first?
I am happy to start the conversation with Madam Vidyu, because that is very important. That question is very important, and my take is on that question is very briefly. I think we can continue the dialogue. That the dystopian picture which is presented by the Enigma of Women in Kerala, that book, that everything is bad and everything is in a very dismal state, is that we cannot accept, and at the same time we cannot say that everything is rosy and glossy about the Kerala women, because the women in Kerala is in a very complex situation of having certain capabilities to move forward, and at the same time there's an erosion of the rights or a space, a lacking of a social space and power, and the lack of power structures. They cannot enter into the power structures largely, and basically our society still remains patriarchal, but the changes is very positive. I think the number of women who are coming forward with higher education, and also in the village level, the women are very central to all the development process. They cannot imagine any development work without the women. So I think that is a positive turn with all the challenges and all the problems. That we can go forward with only confronting with complex situations. We can go forward. That's my take on this question very briefly, and I am very happy, ma'am, to raise that question because it's very important. We will continue the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we have KK, so TG, do you have 1 minute final remarks?
Okay, I will do, TG. I told you something about the local governments, but one complaint always we are hearing nowadays is that, okay, Kerala is okay, number one in every sort of governance system, but what about the incremental growth you are having? Really, that's a problem. We don't have much incremental growth in local governance and decentralization. So nowadays we are trying most to improve in service disbursement of service, different types of services. All our local governments are ISI certified, almost ISS certificate they have. So we are trying every day to improve the service. We are trying to take over powers wherever people are approaching the local man. We don't see that whether that power is with us or not. We are doing service to the people. So we can show you lot of examples about that. So we are behind that. That is nothing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So KK, you have the final words.
See, I'm absolutely open about the Kerala model. And I again underline the point that there cannot be any romanticization. We are facing severe threats. We are now, see, Kerala is also a place where globalization, forces of globalization are at their best. See, because of various reasons, all kinds of globalization forces are consumers. We have good connections, good in many ways, with the what you call the capitalist countries, especially through the Gulf, and culturally market forces are at work. all the privatization of health, privatization of educational institutions, all these are games. So as Sujit was asking, experiments for self-reliance, very little. There are sudden shocks of what you call necessity of self-reliance coming to us. We are responding to it. For example, KSSP at one point of time took up major experiments in housing, simple following the Laurie Baker model, etc., etc. It worked well at a point of time, but suddenly it gets threatened. And we worked for what you call soon after the Bhopal gas tragedy, we called for the boycott of everyday batteries, and that started for a major self-reliance movement, which is even now working. We make a lot of soaps and soap kits and so on and so on. Not only soap, there is a whole Parishad production unit where we try to promote village production, etc., etc. But then there are very powerful commercial interests. So gender again. Gender is again, I will say Kerala gender has several problems. As you should actually, Madam and Mini should continue the argument. Absolutely, there are lots of things. I have always been taking a very, what you call, I will not say, I have my takes, very, very negative takes on the gender in Kerala, which I don't want to discuss at this point of time. But anyway, there is a lot of space for experimentation still in Kerala. And COVID probably is again and again showing us this is the time for experiment. Don't leave this. How we are going to respond to this question that time has provided is now our concern. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists and all of you who have come to stay with us for this very inspiring and exciting session. I think I would echo what KK says, that we regard these as experiments, and so there would be so-called successes or failures, and yet it is important that in the whole process we will see how the people could be mobilized, could take matters into their own hands, and also could be reclaiming the common. And there are a lot of complexities, and so there are also forces from outside. But then I think what Kerala has shown in these COVID times is that despite the usual scene that we see, that the elite groups, the interest groups could always take opportunities to further their interests, here we also see the people's movements, the people's forces taking what KK calls the creative energy to try to regroup and also to reassert the people's agenda. And so I thank you again, and I hope that when the situation improves, we could be organizing another group from China and from other places to come to Kerala and to learn from your experience. And
Welcome.
Especially in these times when there are all these different conflicts, whether it's territorial, whether it is ideological, then we need the solidarity among the people, that we will be focusing on the welfare and well-being of the people. So thank you again, and please come back tomorrow. It will be 6:30 in the morning in India time, 9 o'clock in Hong Kong and Beijing in Chinese Beijing time. So we will have the presentations from our friends from China, and so we will have the two sessions, one at 6:30 a.m. India time, and another at 11:30 a.m. India time. So thank you again, and I think we can start other projects on writing the Kerala stories from the people's perspectives. So good night to you all, and see you tomorrow.